Authorities in Texas are on the hunt for a suspect who killed a fitness trainer inside a church. Here you see in this surveillance video a man dressed in SWAT gear. The victim is a 45-year-old mother of 3.
She was an amazing woman. She worked very hard, not only for her self-fitness, but to help other people get the lifestyle that they needed and wanted.
The victim was reportedly at the church to teach a boot camp style fitness class. Police believe she may have interrupted a burglary. Her official cause of death has not yet been released.
New tonight, reaction from a transgender student at the center of a long fight over what bathroom to use in school.
Tom Grimm says it's going to be difficult starting another school year on Tuesday where he knows he will be singled out. Why? Because he identifies as a boy and wants to be able to use the men's restroom. Grimm will start his junior year at Gloucester High School on Tuesday. Earlier this summer, the ACLU filed a lawsuit on his behalf, and we were there as Grimm attended a hearing in July. This is all because the Gloucester County School Board passed a policy in December that had to do with Grimm. It said Grimm needed to use a bathroom that corresponds with the sex he was born with.
Of course, it's been very hard. It's been very, exhausting at times and difficult as well. But I definitely think that the end has justified the means in this case, and it's very much been worth it.
So are you now allowed to use the boys' restroom?
We haven't really talked about the specifics with where that's concerned. So right now I'm not sure how that's being settled. But I haven't been back to school since the ruling anyway.
What do you think everyone is so afraid of?
I'm not sure, because when you consider certain, I guess arguments or what have you, it doesn't really stand up to scrutiny. But I think a lot of it is just misinformation, and people haven't had a chance to really deal with transgender people in any meaningful way.
Do you envision a day, one day soon, where we won't have to talk about which restroom you'll be able to use?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's very unfortunate that we had to talk about it in this case, but hopefully this ruling will make steps towards the future where that won't have to happen anymore.
To the Supreme Court now, where a controversial case is getting argued before the Supreme Court. At issue, President Obama's immigration plan, which would block the deportation of millions of undocumented immigrants.
The fiery debate over immigration played out on the steps of the Supreme Court, with hundreds of protesters from all across the country. Inside, the justices listened to intense arguments over whether the president has the authority to not only shield more than 4 million undocumented immigrants from deportation, but also grant them the right to work and receive benefits like Social Security and Medicare. The 8 justices appear divided along ideological lines. The conservative justices seem to side with Texas and the other 25 states suing the administration for executive overreach. Justice Anthony Kennedy said it's as if the president is setting the policy and the Congress is executing it. That's just upside down.
It transforms unlawful conduct into lawful conduct. And I think if the executive, the president, has the power to do that, I think that should trouble every American.
The liberal justices seem sympathetic to the administration's arguments. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, noting there are 11 million undocumented immigrants already in the U.S., said inevitably priorities have to be set.
On Monday, the Obama administration and the State Department said the release of the papers detailing Saudi involvement in the 9/11 attacks and its support for al-Qaeda would damage U.S. national security and endanger citizens living abroad. Both the Obama and Bush administrations have refused to release the papers stored in a guarded vault beneath Washington, D.C. The FBI has also refused to unseal the documents. It needs to be classified. Former director of the FBI, Robert S. Mueller, said in a secret meeting. The White House has threatened to veto legislation that would release the documents. It's difficult to imagine a scenario where the president would sign it. White House spokesman Josh Earnest told reporters on Monday. He said the bill would jeopardize international sovereignty and put the U.S. at a significant risk. Obama allies on Capitol Hill, including an unnamed Republican senator, have vowed to prevent the Senate from taking up the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act. The bill would remove Saudi Arabia's immunity in federal court and allow victims of the 9/11 attacks to sue the kingdom.
Governor Bush.
How we doing? Good
All right, good. How you doing? I was wondering, would you be in favor of seeing the 28 pages that have been redacted from the 9/11 Commission report? Would you be wanting to see those released?
Yeah, I'd like to see them. You got them?
Well,
Andrea may have them.
Hopefully we can get them.
In order to have the bill move forward, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would need to file procedural motions. 60 votes are required to have the bill move forward.
After 9/11, it was clear that the Congress was going to be called upon to conduct some form of an inquiry as to what happened. The decision by the leadership was to combine the intelligence committees of the House and the Senate into a single body. For the first time in the history of the Congress, that had occurred.
On April 10th, the former chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and co-chair of the bipartisan Joint Congressional Inquiry into the 9/11 attacks, Bob Graham, told CBS News he believes Saudi Arabia was behind the attacks.
What I'm trying to tell you is, so what? We did not invent corruption.
Graham said support came from the Saudi government, charities, and rich people in the country. He said that support was downplayed because of the special relationship between the United States and the Saudi Arabian kingdom. The evidence is overwhelming. For example, here's Donald Rumsfeld chomping at the bit to keep the momentum of the New World Order's tyrannical soft war moving.
We haven't had an attack here in 5 years. Hell, the perception of the threat is so low in the society today that it's not surprising that the behavior pattern reflects a low threat assessment. And the same things in Europe. There's a low threat perception. Correction for that, I suppose, is an attack.
Building 7, I often hear about. No plane hit Building 7. Why did Building 7 come down? What do you tell people?
What is Building 7?
Building 7.
I have no idea. I've never heard that.
We must never forget our fellow Americans that paid the ultimate price in a bid to end the American way, quarterbacked by a protected elite class now blackmailing the U.S. government by threatening to sell off $750 billion in U.S. assets. This obvious and inflated admission of guilt by the Saudis begs the question, how much are the 2,996 innocent fellow American lives that perished on 9/11/2001 worth to you?
What's going on, Betty? Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there?
Every few steps, Mohammed Jassim needs a break. His lungs can't take it. His body shakes. A month after he was exposed to a chemical attack, he still needs shots twice a day to control the symptoms. This man was also exposed. He had a small blemish that spread and grew into this. And little Fatima, the billboard bearing her image reads, "The first martyr of the Taza chemical attack." Fatima had come into this clinic alive, Dr. Hussein Ali remembers.
She was crying, but she was wounded, and the chemical was all over her body, like black grease.
The town of Taza has been hit by numerous chemical attacks. One of the strikes happened right here, and there's still a very distinct chemical odor, a bit hard to describe.
Hundreds were injured, describing trouble breathing, burning eyes, and blistering skin. Chemical weapons experts say that it was some sort of homemade mustard gas, possibly combined with something else. Because of security concerns, this man does not want his identity disclosed. His background is chemistry.
Look at this book. It's the same one we used in the old Iraqi army for training on how to protect the Iraqi forces from gases. I found this book in the market, and it has very dangerous information.
For example, details on the chemical makeup of lethal gases and how to store them. Mustard gas, he says, is among the simplest to concoct.
Anyone with a degree in chemistry would know how to prepare.
ISIS also has plenty of foreign operatives with expertise.
If we compare this attack in Taza, which was about a month ago, maybe less than a month ago, to the attacks maybe 5-6 months ago, we saw a difference. We see that they have move forward with their chemical capabilities.
The U.S. has bombed Mosul University's high-tech chemistry lab, but the chemist says there are plenty of other facilities ISIS could potentially be using, and the advance of their capabilities poses a serious threat, both here and beyond.
In the years leading up to the 1988 Seoul Olympics, South Korean police, in an effort to enhance the image of the country, were ordered to clean the streets of vagrants, the homeless, and the drunks. That often meant the disabled and children on the streets were removed as well. Some were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. By 1986, thousands of those children were detained in facilities like Brothers Home, part of a massive money-making operation partly based on slave labor. Internal records claim 513 people died there between 1975 and 1986. The real toll is unknown.
누군가 하나는 달라들고 하는 사람이 있거든. 왜 이게 됐고 하냐 하면서. 근데 그 본보기도 하나를 죽인. 진짜 이 입에서 거품이 올라줍니다. 그러다 보니까 우리 어린 나이에 우리 그런 걸 봤을 때는 그냥 공포스러운 거야.
Choi Seung-woo still weeps at the memory of what happened to him when he was just 14. A police officer accused him of stealing a piece of bread on the way home from school.
파들 성경이 문학하고 욕을 하고 이 새끼 거짓말하네 하더만은 바지를 내두고 거기에 나이타 담배 피우던 그 나이타를 가지고 뜨겁게 해가지고 고치에 내가 아직까지 나는 상처가 있거든요. 그 고문을 해서 너무 힘들어가지고 나는 훔쳤다라고 그렇게.
Choi said that after the torture, he falsely confessed in the hopes of being let go. Instead, he was sent to Brothers Home, where he says he was raped over and over.
그리고 소대장이 옷을 벗기고 성폭행을 하고 나는 거기에 또 항문까지 다 찢어지가면서.
As many as 100 children lived in dorms like this one. Choi said when the doors were locked at 6 p.m., the violence by the guards was uncontrolled. Despite 2 previous investigations, no one, including the facility's owner, Park In-kyun, has ever been held accountable for the violence committed inside the compound. After a raid in 1987, Park served a short prison stint for embezzlement and other charges. As part of a protest, Han Jung-son made drawings depicting the horror of his captivity.
형제복전 사건이 87년도에 터졌지만은 그 당시에 다시 경찰에 가고 이 사건 제대로 좀 수사해달라고 말을 할 수 없는 게 그랬다간 또 다시 다른 곳에 잡혀갈 수 있다는 두려움이 있었겠죠.
The current government refuses to revisit the case, calling it a financial burden and saying the evidence is too old. An official from Seoul's Interior Ministry told the AP that the government, quote, can't make separate laws for every incident, and there have been so many incidents since the Korean War, end quote. As South Korea prepares for the Winter Olympics in 2018, former inmates are demanding a new investigation, as well as compensation and an official apology for their suffering.